Hi everybody, welcome to Be Fit, Stay Fit America. I'm Dr. Paul Kennedy. Today, as you can see, we're going to talk about training the arms. Now everybody wants to train the arms. Unfortunately, they many times do it incorrectly. We're going to show you a half a dozen ways to train the biceps, the triceps, and the muscles known as the forearm. But first, as always, a little bit of anatomy. The bicep and the tricep are antagonistic muscles. In other words, when one is flexing, the other one is relaxing. Now, whenever you use your bicep, you are causing your forearm, your lower arm bones, of which there are two, to come up away from the floor. Whenever you do that, you have flexed your bicep. Your bicep really originates back here in your scapula, comes down through a small groove over the humerus, down into the muscle belly, and then attaches to the two bones of the lower arm. So when your bicep flexes, it comes up. Your tricep attaches on the other side of your elbow, and when it flexes, it goes all the way out and extends that lower arm. We're going to show you about a half a dozen exercises for both of these muscles, and we also want to show you a few exercises for training the forearm. These muscles are known as the hand flexors and the hand extensors, the top and the bottom of the forearm. We'll show you a few exercises for those as well. We're going to begin our training of the arms by doing a prototypical arm exercise for the bicep. It's a straight bar bicep curl. Now, I prefer the straight bar to the curved bar because it gives a little bit better workout to the lateral head of my bicep. When you hold it flatter, it works that lateral bicep a little bit better. But here's a couple of technique tips. This is what I see a lot in most gyms when we do this exercise. We position the bar here, and instead of letting the muscles lift the weight and pausing, I see a lot of arm swinging. That's called a cheat curl. And what it is, well, it's cheating. By cheating, you're using momentum to lift the weight. And remember in one of our earlier shows, we talked about the 5 principles of a properly performed exercise. This is one of the exercises where it really comes into play. So whenever you're doing a bicep curl, no matter what type you're doing, we're going to show you a few. I want you to lift the weight under control all the way up in about 1 to 2 seconds and take the muscle all the way down to a stretch at the bottom. So there's the technique. Here we go. With our bicep curl, we're going to start at the bottom so we feel that good stretch right there in the elbow. You see my arms are not crooked. I've gone all the way down. I've stretched that bicep tendon, and we want to do that one with each exercise. We're going to come up under control, pause, and then back down slowly, all the way till it touches our thigh. Then back up under control and pause. Now, with our bicep training, whether you're using the quick set or whether you're using regular sets, we're going to do 1 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions per exercise. That way, we're going to get plenty of strength training to the muscle, and then we're going to give it a couple of days off. So, a flat bicep barbell curl, up under control, pausing, and then down slowly, making the weight resistance move on the way down against the muscle, and then back up under control. A simple way to train your biceps, the flat, straight barbell curl. Now let's go to another type of exercise that uses the same technique. One of my favorite exercises for training the biceps is a concentration curl. I'm going to show you how to do it today using the quick set system. That's why I've set up 3 dumbbells in descending order of resistance. I'll show you why that's important in a minute. Let's take a look at the technique. First of all, I'm going to take the first dumbbell. This is a dumbbell that I should assume I can do to momentary fatigue between 8 and 12 times. I hang the dumbbell down directly in front of me so it's straight down. I get a good stretch here at the elbow, and my elbow is actually pushed against my thigh. My opposite elbow goes on my opposite thigh, hand across the bicep. That's to stabilize my arm. Here's the technique. Up under control at about 1 to 2, pause, and back down in about 2 to 4 seconds to a dead hang stretch so I get that good stretch. Now remember, it's an upper body exercise, so we're looking at momentary fatigue between 8 and 12 repetitions. Let's assume I've gotten 9 repetitions, and I'm going to try number 10. Can't quite complete the exercise. I'm going to put the first dumbbell down, roll it out of the way so I don't bang on it with the second one, pick up the next exercise, which is going to be done with 25% less resistance, and start the exercise. Up under control, back down under control. This one I'll do as many times as possible until I reach momentary fatigue. When that occurs, I put that one down and roll that one out of the way, pick up the final one. Now I'm using a resistance that's about half of the original resistance, but it's extremely challenging against the bicep. But that means that I'm going to get an even better workout. And of course, one of the disadvantages of the concentration curl is once I do the right side, I've got to do the left side. So give the bicep curl a try using a concentration curl. It's a great way to train your biceps. Now we'll show you even another way to do your biceps. another simple but standard exercise for training the biceps is called a preacher curl. Now this is a preacher bench. I'm going to show you a disadvantage of it in a minute, but first I want to show you how to adjust it. This has an adjustable seat. Most of them do. And we adjust it so that when we sit down, the bottom part of our tricep is lying flat against the bench. Now in some cases, depending on where the cradle is, you can simply pick up the barbell from there. In some cases, like in this one, you'll have to stand up, grasp the barbell, and then reseat yourself. Now, with the preacher bench, we want to get a good stretch at the bottom. See how my elbow joint is very flat? That means I'm stretching the biceps tendon. And our technique is always the same. Up under control, and then back down slowly under control. But there's a fly in the ointment. Whenever we're doing a bicep curl with a preacher bench, only half of the movement is actually against gravity. We're going against gravity, against gravity, against gravity. We get to right about here, and now we're pulling it basically straight in. So a preacher bench is not my preferred exercise, but you can give it a try. If you want to make it a little bit more gravity oriented, simply stand up, lean forward, and that way more of the movement is against gravity. Try the preacher bench in whatever configuration, and you'll find that it's a great way to train that bicep. Now, we've got even more to show you. Here's another way to use the preacher curl for training the biceps. We're going to use a dumbbell instead of a barbell. The reason it's a little bit better, in my view, is because we're able to use it almost as a concentration curl. We get a little bit more anti-gravity movement rather than swinging it straight toward our face. So try the bicep curl using a dumbbell instead of a barbell, and you'll find you might get a little bit better workout out of that bicep. Now I'd like to show you a method for training your biceps that uses a selectorized machine. We've used selectorized machines for training all the other muscles. Now I want to show you how we do it with the bicep. First of all, remember, since this is a selectorized machine, there is a seat, and we have to make sure that the seat setting is properly done. There's a little lever at the bottom that allows us to adjust the seat height. We adjust the seat height so that after we pick up the weight, our elbows are flat against the pad, as are our triceps, so we can lift it easily. Now, at the selectorized machine, we have to use the weight stack. I'm going to take the pin, I'm going to place it at a weight with which I can do approximately 8 to 12 repetitions to momentary fatigue. I'm going to pick up the resistance by standing, sit back onto the machine, pause and get that good stretch at the bottom. You see how my elbow joint is nice and flat. I'm going to bring it up under control and pause, and back down under control. And you can see that my elbow is right on the lever of rotation. And that means we're getting a good stretch out of the bicep and also driving all of that strength, all of that resistance right into the bicep. All the way down under control, pause, back up under control. 1 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions. Now when we get to a point where we can't lift anymore and we want to take the weight up in our next exercise, we can't always go up in 10-pound plates. We have to use what are known as saddle plates. Here's one of them. We simply take the saddle plate and we put it into the selectorized stack. And now in this case I've gone, for example, from 40 to 42.5 instead of jumping from 40 to 50. That way our progress is a lot more regular and we can get a lot more out of the machine. The selectorized bicep curl, one of the easiest and most productive ways to train your biceps. Now that we've shown you a half a dozen ways to do the biceps, we're going to show you about a half a dozen ways to do the triceps. Now the triceps, remember, are the muscle on the back of your arm. They originate way under the shoulder and the back, and they insert or attach on the opposite side of the elbow. So when that tricep contracts, it extends that lower arm. So any exercise, like a pressing movement, that extends that lower arm also is going to use the triceps. So the idea in most of these exercises is to isolate the triceps so just the elbow is moving. And we're going to do that in a variety of ways. One of the more popular ways of doing the triceps is an exercise called the kickback. It's done pretty easily. All I've got is a flat workbench. We're going to take a dumbbell. I'm going to bring my upper arm bone so it's parallel to my torso. See that position? Right against the ribs. And I'm going to take the elbow and extend my lower arm and extend it right at the elbow. Notice that my elbow doesn't move. My elbow remains stable and just my lower arm is moving. So let's get back to that technique we always talk about. Extend back 1 to 2 seconds under control, pause, and then back down slowly all the way through till we feel a little bit of a stretch under that elbow. I've stabilized my upper body with my hand on the bench and my knee, and we're going to go back under control, pause, and then back down. Now remember, we're not looking for this. We're not looking to make you look like a pendulum on a clock. We don't want you to do it the quickest. We want you to do it with the most complete range of motion. So back up under control and back down. If you're using the quick set system, when you reach that fatigue between 8 and 12 repetitions, put the first dumbbell down, pick up one about 25 to 30% less, and continue the exercise to momentary fatigue. The tricep kickback, a real easy way to do the triceps. Now let me show you another one that's just as typical. This one's a little bit more advanced. This is a push press behind the neck. It's also done with a dumbbell. We simply take a dumbbell in both hands, we swing it around behind the head, we push straight up against the dumbbell. Now again, please notice that my elbows are remaining stable. My upper arm is moving, my forearm is moving up and away from the floor, so each time I press, it's my tricep that's doing the movement. I've isolated the movement of the tricep. This one also gives us a great stretch because we're pushing the weight over the head. Those of you who haven't had much practice with this, you might want to try this with a lighter dumbbell to get used to the position. When we reach momentary fatigue, we come back over the head and put the dumbbell back down. So we've got the tricep kickback and a press behind the neck to be able to isolate that tricep. Let's move on to another part of the gym and we'll show you another way to do the triceps. Another method of training the triceps using a selectorized device is a tricep push down. Now this is a stack loaded device on an end of a multi-gym. I'm simply going to lean against the back pad. I've chosen this particular apparatus to make it easy for me to grip, and in this case I'm going to bring the weight down, pause here, and this is as far as my elbows go. You'll notice from now on my elbows are going to stay in the same position, and the only part of my body that'll move is going to be my forearms. This is the push down part. So with the tricep push down, we're going to get into position. Our upper arm is almost parallel to our torso, and now we're going to go straight down under control, pause, and back up in about 1 to 2 seconds. Down under control, and back up. We want to use that slow movement so we remain in contraction time for about 4 to 6 seconds per repetition. Remember, 1 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions, or since it's a selectorized machine, we can easily use the quick set system. Try this one for your tricep training. As we showed you when we did the biceps training, we used the selectorized machine. Well, this is a selectorized machine. In other words, a weight stack machine that we're going to use to train the triceps. Now it has a seat setting just as most of them do. So we want to adjust the seat setting up or down to match the height of our torso so that when we place ourselves in the machine, we get a good alignment with the pad. Also, we have a back pad. The reason we want to move this forward as much as we can is so that we're stabilized in the machine. It keeps us from rocking back and forth and cheating. Once we've set those pads and we've set the resistance on the weight stack, we're going to hop into the machine. I'm going to grasp the handles at the top, put my elbows as far down the pad as I can so I'm right near the center of rotation. I'm going to extend my arm out and down, pause, and then back up under control to a good stretch. I really want to feel that stretch behind the elbow here so I get a good range of motion. 1 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions is all we need to train the triceps. And we can do it as a quick set, or we can do it as 3 separate sets. Tricep extension on a selectorized machine, a typical way to do the triceps in the gym. And now a simple barbell exercise for training the triceps. This way we can train both triceps simultaneously. It takes a little bit of technique, and I want you to practice this with a very light weight before you start the exercise. I've got the barbell right across my lap. I'm going to lean back on the bench, lift the barbell up over my head, just like I was doing a bench press. Except now I'm going to keep my elbows right where they are, bring the barbell straight down toward my forehead, pause, and then back down under control. For those of you who are just starting out, and even for those of you who aren't, it would be a great idea to have a spotter for this exercise. Up under control and back down under control. Notice that the only part that's moving is my forearm. I'm pushing it away from my body, and that way and extending the lower part of the arm, I'm only using the tricep in isolation. The back line, tricep extension. You can try this one as a great way to isolate those triceps. Now that we've shown you several exercises for training your biceps and your triceps, let's talk a little bit about the forearms. This is probably one of the most neglected parts of the body there is. Now the purpose of the forearm is to do hand flexion and extension. By that I mean when we want our hand to come this way, it is flexing. And it's this part, the bottom part of the forearm, that is used in a hand flexion. When we want to do hand extension, we put our palm down and we bring our hand from this position back, and we use the top part of our forearm for hand extension. Well, we have to figure out a way to put resistance against that, and it's not very difficult to do. One of the more simple ways is to simply use a light barbell. Now I'm going to kneel in front of a bench. I'm going to place the top of my forearm against the bench, and we're going to do the flexion exercise first. I've hopefully chosen a barbell that I can do for 8 to 12 repetitions to failure. But the more important part is to get that good stretch at the bottom. Now notice, in terms of technique, I'm not doing these. I'm going to make sure that I start in a stretched position. You can see the stretch in my wrist. Come all the way up under control as far as my wrist can go. Pause, and then back down until I feel that stretch right around the bottom of my wrist again. So that's our technique. Up under control as usual. Back down in about twice that time to a good stretch. Now, after we've trained the forearms in this way, after we've done those hand flexions, we also want to train the other part of the forearm, and that's here where we do the wrist extensions or the hand extensions. And that way I'm going to put my palms down, place my forearm on the bench. Now, usually I would have to use a slightly lighter barbell if I had gone to momentary fatigue with the first one. But I'm going to put my palms down, let my wrists hang straight down so I feel the stretch just at the top of my wrist, sort of behind my hand. I'm going to bring it up under control. Notice that my forearm stays right where it is. I'm not going to move that forearm bone. And then back down until I feel a stretch on that wrist. So we're going up, under control, and back down as we usually do. This is a wrist extension using a barbell. But we have other options. If we don't want to use a barbell, we can simply use a dumbbell. With wrist flexions, we'll start in the same position we did with the barbell, and we're using one arm at a time. I'm simply going to put my forearm against the pad, put my other hand over top of it. We're sort of doing a concentration wrist flexion, bringing it up under control, pause, and then back down. The same technique we always use. And of course, because we're using a dumbbell, one arm at a time, we have to do both sides equally. For the wrist extension, you'll find that we have to use a slightly lighter weight. So I've gotten a slightly lighter dumbbell. I'm going to put this time my palm down, put the dumbbell in my hand, make sure that my hand and wrist are hanging over the end of the bench, stabilize my forearm with the opposite hand, bring it up under control, and back down slowly to a stretch. So we feel the stretch behind the wrist. So there we are, training and flexing the wrist this way for this part of the forearm, the bottom part of the forearm in hand or wrist flexion, and popping it over with our palm down, doing wrist extension to train the top part of the forearm. So we've shown you some easy ways now to train both sides of the forearm. Now I want to show you an easy way to do it using rubber strapping like we've been using through our entire series. Let's take a look at that one. Let's finish this series on training your forearm by using the rubber strapping. This is the same type we've been using throughout the series. I've chosen the middle level. I don't want something real heavy. I don't want something real light. It's real simple to do. I flattened it out against my palm. Now I'm going to grip. I'm going to reach under the bench, pull it tight, so I'm simply holding onto it with my other hand, and I'm going to stretch it until I feel that stretch in my wrist, grab it, bring it up under control and pause, and back down to a stretch. So it looks identical to the dumbbell exercise we just did, only this time we're using rubber strapping. If it isn't enough resistance, well, I'll just give it another tug and make it a little more difficult to do. If it's too much resistance, I'll just loosen it a little bit and make the adjustment. When we want to do the wrist extension, I simply pop it over, reach under the bench again, pull it tight. I'm gripping it with my fingers now, getting that good stretch at the bottom, keeping my forearm flat to the bench, up under control and pause, and back down under control, and back up and pause, and back down to a stretch. So there's a simple way to do your wrist extensions and wrist flexions right at home using some simple rubber strapping. If you can't get to the fitness center that day or you don't have access to dumbbells or barbells, let's go back to that strapping we've used before. Remember, we have different resistance levels. I'm going to choose just one of them and show you how to do a bicep curl. Just going to take a chair, seat, doesn't really matter. I'm going to wrap it around my hand. I'm going to put the other one under my foot. And now I'm going to maintain that concentration curl position and bring it up under control, pause, and back down under control to a stretch. And believe me, this is a lot more difficult than it looks. So if you have the rubber strapping, it makes it really easy for you to do the bicep curls, just like you would do it with a dumbbell or you would do it with a barbell. Speaking of a barbell, let me show you how to do that. We're going to do that with the rubber tubing that we've used before. You all remember that from previous shows. This is the rubber tubing. It's color-coded for different resistance levels. Each one is a little bit thicker than the next. I'm going to choose one of them. And to do the bicep curl with the rubber tubing, it's really very simple. We're going to step right on the center of the tubing. If we want more resistance, we spread our feet a little bit wider to stretch out the tubing a little bit more. Stand straight up, just like we were going to do that barbell curl I showed you at the very beginning of the show. And then up under control, pause, and back down under control, just like we do a barbell. So if you can't get to the fitness center, you can use rubber tubing or rubber strapping and get essentially the same workout right in the privacy of your own home. So give that a try. Another way to complete the tricep kickback exercise is using rubber strapping. We've used these many times before. Simply take the strap, wrap it around the hand a couple of times. I'm going to lay the other end on the floor, step on the strapping. I'm going to assume the same position on the bench, supporting my weight with my hand and my knee on the bench. Put the upper arm bone parallel to the torso, and we're going to kick back, just like we did with the dumbbell. Back under control and back down. Kick back under control, pause, and back down. The tricep kickback using rubber strapping. A simple way to do those triceps. Don't forget, next week, I'm going to be going through a workout and taking you with me, so make sure you take a look at that show. We'll be back next week, and remember, America, to be fit and stay fit. Thanks for joining us. Good luck on your program. I know you can do it.